Right, okay, so I'm going to do another explosion this time, but this time I'm going to generate a graphic. So if we look at one of the sprite sheets we've got, there is a little explosion graphic here, and it starts like white hot and then gets fading out a little bit until it's like a whisper. So I'm going to use this effect. Okay, so that's going to involve creating a sprite with 6 frames and then animating them and making it disappear. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is go back to my game and I'm going to create a sprite. So I'm going to say right click on code and I'm going to say add new item. Well, I'm going to say add class because that's what I'm going to create. So I'm going to call this explosion. And it generates the basic class, but I want this to be a sprite. So on the class line, I say, okay, make it a sprite. Now it's moaning at me because it's missing the libraries at the top, the using statement. So I'm just going to go to game setup, and I'm just going to copy all the using statements. It doesn't matter if some of them aren't used. I'm just copying them so I've got them. Okay, now I need to define this sprite. So I'm going to say public explosion. Now we need to be able to say where the sprite explosion needs to be. So I need to know what sprite's position. So the easy way of doing this is say give me a sprite and I'll use some information from it to generate my explosion. Okay, so I'm going to request that information. In order for a sprite to work, I need to add it to the engine manager, the main game engine component, because if I don't, then it won't do anything. I'm going to set its position. So I'm going to say the position of it is the same as the sprite that I was given. So that will say set it in the same position. And then I need to create my frames. So I'm going to say frame.define, and this is the boring bit. So I need to know what texture that was. Sorry, I couldn't start. I knew that sneeze was coming there. So that was the vertical shmup. So if I go back to my assets, vertical shmup was on txvert. So I'm going to say gm.txvert, and then I say new rectangle, and then I need to specify the rectangle. So going back to GIMP, I need my rectangle tool, and I'm going to use the YE one. So I'm going to put my rectangle on. So let's position that. The width and height of them are all going to be the same. So once I've got the size of this correct, it should just be a matter of working out the new X and Y. So I've got the position of that. So I've got 48949. So that's 48949. And then the width and height is 3030. So the nice thing about this is that once I've done one, all I've got to do is copy and paste. So if I just make sure my cursor's on that line and do Control C, that copies the whole line. Then I can just say Control V, and I need 6. So I've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The height is going to be the same. So the only thing that's going to change is the X. So I'm going to go back to GIMP, and I'm just going to increase the X value until it's over the next sprite. I've now just lost it because I held my finger down. Come back, holes forgiven. Come back. Don't know why it went so far. Oh dear, what was the number? 489. Let me put it back at 489. Right, so I'm going to just utch that along until it covers the next one. Generally, when you make your own sprite sheets, if you align things like this, it makes it easier to define all the frames. So the next one was 523. So this one's 523. The next one, and it looks like they might all be equally spaced, so I should be able to make a calculation for the next ones, but I'll do it all manually. So the next one is at 557. the next one, if I scroll along, is at, oh, what are you doing? Oh, now, what was that thing I had to do? Edit, preferences, was it? Reset. You what? Oh, is it? Oh, Windows Manager. Where's window management? Oh, yeah. Reset, that's it. Right, wait until I finish. Hang on, what have I done, George? Restart the whole thing? Oh, you're joking. I don't want to save anything, so. Discard change, not bothered. Right, back to mono game. Oh, here we go. Short intervention there. Load up, GIMP, come on. Right, so back on the game. Right, so rectangle. So I think I've done. Zoom in a little bit more. No, that didn't work, George. So it's all right. I've got the number down. I've got the number down here, have I? 591. Right, so I'm going to move it along. It's really annoying. $625. If these are slightly screwed up, that's my fault, but I'm not too fussed. All right, and then the last one, I'm just going to try and manually work it out. 659. That'll do me. It'll show you the effect anyway. Right, so I've got an explosion sprite. I've got a position for it. Okay. I just need to now generate it. So let's go back to the boxy. And in the def thing, I'm going to do. I actually don't need it to stay on screen now, so I'm going to comment all that out. I still want the sound though, so I'm going to keep that. But then I want to generate a explosion sprite, and I'm just going to pass it this, which is this sprite. So I'm going to run this now, and when I shoot one of the things, it appears on screen and stays on screen forever. So I need to do something to get rid of it. Okay, so what I need to do on the explosion, I need to set up animation. So I need to say frame dot animator, and then I want to do a frame rate animation. So I want to like change the picture every so often. So I'm going to say animate rate, and I need to decide how short that's going to be. I want it to not look stupid. So I'll try 0.1f. That might be way too slow. You might go, and then the last frame action, I'm going to say, get rid of it, kill it. So let's just see what happens with that. It's probably too slow. I probably need it quicker. It's not very big either, so I'm going to scale it. I'm going to give it a scale velocity. Yes, I can do that. I'll show you that in a sec. So I'm going to set a scale velocity up so it gets bigger as it disintegrates. It was a bit slow, so I'll speed it up as well. So I'm going to put that on like 4 400% scaling, and I'm going to shorten that to 20th of a second. Yeah, so we should be able to fade it out as well. I'll show you how to do that. Right, so if I shoot that one up there, that's a bit better. Oh, I missed. And I'm going to rotate it, because I think it looked cool rotating. So rotation velocity equals 1080. A bit like how I had for the, just when the boxy was rotating on its own. Right, give me one to shoot. Come on. Right, if we want it to fade out, what we need to do, we need to go up to the class definition and say, right, use a fade routine. And then it gives us an error and it says, right, do you want to implement this? So we say, yes, we do want to implement this. And it will generate this weird thing. But all we've got to do, if I just get rid of that a minute, so you can see a bit more of this. What happens, we're going to activate a fade system. And when it gives us a new value to fade, we're going to set the alpha, which is the transparency of a graphic value, the alpha to that new value. So the last thing we need to do is set up the fader. And there's loads of ways in this works. So we say, right, we're going to fade this sprite. How long do we want it to fade over? So if we look at what we've got here on screen, we've got 6 frames for a 20th of a second each. So that's 0.05 times 6. So in total, the time is going to be 0.3. So 3/10 of a second that this is going to exist for. There's no point in fading it for any longer because it's not going to be there. The direction we want to fade, we want to go to 0 because we're currently completely opaque, which is 1. And then it just needs to use the event manager. So we just say, oh, use the event manager. Right, so there isn't anything else we need to do. The bit that does the magic is this is how we just the settings for it. This is the bit that we're using the value for. You can actually use this to generate anything where you want to change a number from 1 to 0. So, well, let's just see if it works, if I remembered how my fader system works. Oh, that's better. That probably didn't work properly. I seem to have messed up my fading system. Let's make this number bigger or smaller. Just to see if it works. That's how the fader system should work, but I think I've broken something on that. Yeah, right. That faded this time, so let's just mess with that value. I think I've screwed the calculation up that it's doing. So you got to pump it to get the effect. Let's fade it out a little bit. It depends what sort of graphic you've got. If I was just doing the rotating thing, I could have done it on that. But there's nothing to stop you doing this. Just as a final thing, so I might generate a random number. I might say if gm.r float next float, that will generate a number between 0 and 1. So if I say if it's above 0.5, then I want to do, let's move that out of the way. I want to do this system of explosion using the explosion thing. I'm always going to do that, I think, the sound. If it isn't that, else, so you might have seen this in Python, then I'm going to use this system where I had the like scaly bit going on instead. So I'm randomly picking how it explodes. Theoretically, let's see if it works. But that's how you can make like a little random choice. So when I shoot, let's see, I'll shoot. I need more bullets. Okay, so that's how you can do it. So I could do that eye fade a bit again, but only use it when I do the, let's get it to fix that. Implement interface. Copy the code from the explosion because it's the same thing. So get rid of that bit. Do the setup bit. So I need to do that. But I only want to do it here. So let's try that. And it should fade that cube out when the cube destroys. Okay, so you just got to play around with the effects that you want. I mean, them explosions are alright. There are better explosions that you can find. But look for some explosion sprites when you want to try and do that. Okay.